Okay, hello everybody. It's me again. This is part 2. I don't know how this part of the video is going to go. I don't know if it's going to film well or not. I'm going to try. But this is how you take basically any UV-5R or any of its variants, or you can also take the UV-82 or any of its variants, and you can limit your radio's ability to transmit out of band. Say if the radio falls into the wrong hands, or say, you may lose the radio temporarily, you lose the radio outright, it gets stolen, or what have you. Well, one thing to note is that, this radio, the UV-5Rs and their variants and the UV-82s are rather simple radios. They're not very complicated, and they're rather easy to figure out. But even with that in mind, I don't think the overwhelming majority of the public are going to be capable of fully comprehending the radio itself. Other ham radio operators might, but even with that, you can still reduce, maybe not completely eliminate, but you can reduce the chances of your radio, if it gets into the wrong hands, you can reduce your chances of your radio being abused in a way that's not consistent with ham radio practices. Again, this is not going to eliminate the problem, but this can reduce the problem. So here are the ways you can do this. We are licensed ham radio operators, and this particular programming you see on Chirp is for a BFF8HP, which if you watched part 1 of this, you saw that BFF8HP. So this is basically the programming of the radio, basically. And the way this is the end of the file. This is like the channel numbers. If you look at where my cursor is, way down here, you'll see that I'm down near channel 127, 124, 123, 117, and I'm gliding up to channel 107. Now, this is one of the things, because these are the weather channels that I've entered in here. These are the weather channels. Well, these weather channels are out of bounds for the ham radio band, and you are not allowed to transmit on these frequencies. So how do you go about preventing the radio from being transmitted? Well, one of the things I also do with these particular channels, and something I didn't do with my current programming, but I'll get to it later. But look right here. Do you see this little thing that I'm circling? You see my cursor circling something right here? This is under the column called duplex. Duplex under Chirp. You can select off on the duplex. If you do that, if you set it to off, you have turned off the transmit ability of that channel. That's how you block out the transmitter on any UV-5R and any UV-82 with Chirp. You go under duplex and you set your channel duplex to off, and you set it for all of the channels that you only want to monitor but you do not want to transmit with. Okay. Again, this is assuming that you may lose this radio, or it may just fall into the wrong hands or whatever. Another thing I do is I set the power output to low, so that in case whoever gets a hold of your radio, if they go in here and they change the duplex to, back to either minus, plus, or to, what's the simplex setting? What is that? Let's see. To none. If they set it to none, or it's a plus or minus, they can once again re-enable the transmitter so it can transmit on that channel. But if you set it to off, it will turn the transmitter off. So another thing I do is under the power column, I will highlight all of these. Well, let me do this another way. There we go. And then what I do is I use the shift to arrow down. I hope I can. And let's see. Okay, so shift down. You see I'm highlighting everything here. Okay, so I'm highlighting everything. Let me see, just to make sure the camera's within view. Okay, so you can see I've highlighted everything below this point. What I'm going to do next, and you can see it's all solid filled, click Properties at the top. Click that, and then you're going to do several things here. You're going to set duplex to off, and you're going to check mark this. Check mark duplex off. So you'll do it and set it to off. There are your options: none, minus, plus, split, off. When you turn it off, you stop the radio from transmitting on that channel. And then you come down and you set skip to S, which I'm going to do, and you set your power setting to low. This is the BFF8HP, so this has 3 power settings. So I'm setting power low, I'm setting the skip function, and I'm turning the transmitter off for all of these highlighted channels. I click OK, and boom. Give it a few seconds here to update. Go all the way down to the bottom, and now you'll see everything is turned off in the duplex column. Everything is set to low power, and the skip under the scan has been turned to skip mode for all of these channels. So basically that means if I hit the scan mode, none of these monitor only frequencies will be a part of the scan mode, which is exactly what I want. But you may want to be able to scan these. The choice is yours, but I prefer not to scan these monitor only frequencies. And so again, I've turned off the transmitter for all of these. I've set the power to low so that if the person who takes off with your radio, if they get chirp on their computer and they figure out that this is how you turn the transmitter back on, the power setting will be on low so that they won't be heard very well. So yeah, that's the whole purpose of that, is to keep it kind of low profile. Of course, if my radio were stolen or lost, I would, and if it got into the hands of someone who's not very competent, I would definitely want to do a fox hunt, which if you're a ham radio operator, you know what that is. If you're not a ham radio operator, then you may not know. But basically hunt down the transmitter and try to figure out where it's at. Long story short, this is all an attempt to keep this radio from being abused if it were to fall into the wrong hands. That's why I do that. And I have confined the radio to transmit only to be the transmitter capable when it's in the ham frequencies. So let's do one more thing to make it difficult for someone who gets their hands on this radio. Now let's move the camera just slightly over. Just ever so slightly. Not by much, but just a little bit. Okay, go over here below memories. You'll see my cursor over here in the top left corner. Go under settings. Okay, hopefully that popped up. Yep, it did. Now, under Settings, go to Other Settings. Settings, Other Settings. And then look down near the bottom. You'll see VHF Lower Limit. You'll see VHF Lower Limit here. You'll see VHF Upper Limit, UHF Lower Limit, and UHF Upper Limit. My BFF 8 HP is set to Lower Limit 144. It defaults to 136, but I set it to 144. VHF Upper Limit 148. It defaults to 174. UHF Lower Limit 420. The default is 400, I believe. And the UHF upper limit is either 470, 480, or 512, or 520. But I set it to 450, which is the edge of the 70 centimeter ham band. So what this settings does, what these 4 settings do right here, what this does is it limits the VFO, or frequency mode, of the Baofeng radio. It limits the UV82s and it limits the UV-5Rs, all of them. And you can confine the radio's VFO, or frequency mode, to these ranges. No matter how hard the person tries, they won't be able to actually punch in any frequency beyond the 2 meter and 440 frequencies when they're in VFO, or frequency mode. They can sit there all day. They can type in 162.550 and try to type in the weather frequencies. They won't get them in. This blocks their efforts. This keeps them from being able to do that. And this is very important. So hopefully all of this makes sense, and I hope you understand how this works, why it works, and why it's so effective. So yeah, this is how you reduce, not eliminate, but reduce the impact if your radio gets lost, stolen, or just simply it finds its way into the wrong hands by whatever means might be possible. One more thing before I end this video. Down here at the bottom of the settings menus, you see there's one final listing. It's down here at the bottom. It's called Service Settings. Here it is. This controls the squelch of the Baofeng radios, UV-5Rs and UV-82s alike. Now, one of the other long-term complaints of many ham radio operators is that the squelch settings of the Baofengs are not set correctly. They're not adjusted properly. And so when you go into the menus and you try to adjust the squelch is not really set correctly. It's not really effective. There's 10 levels of squelch on this radio, but all of those 10 settings, those 10 levels of squelch, are set in this menu here that you see in front of you. VHF squelch setting 0, squelch 1, squelch 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 for VHF, and then 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 for UHF. So you have 10 settings for both the VHF and the UHF portions. I have set my VHF and UHF squelch to be identical across both of them. However, I modified the settings from the original configuration. And I got that information from this menu that you see in front of you. I don't know if you can see this too well, but this is from a website, miclore.com/uppercase com /images lowercase /capital letter squelch capital letter set8.jpg. This website contains recommendations for setting your Baofeng radio and modifying your Baofeng radio squelch settings under chirp to make it more effective so that your squelch behaves more like a regular radio and the way the squelch normally is supposed to work on a regular radio. Now these radios on a chip, like the Baofeng radios, I don't know why it is that the squelch settings in this service settings menu is not optimized. But when these radios are sent from the factory, the squelch settings are not optimized for the radio. So on this website, they have several listings for you to try and see what squelch settings work best for you. And you can do it through trial and error. I find that the one labeled as squelch set number 8 seems to work really well. And I've got this, because of how well it works, I have it set on all of my UV82s. I don't have many. I think I have like a grand total of 5, which some people might say, oh, you've got a lot. No, not really. And then also the same settings are on my GT-5R variations, including my brand new GT-5R. So I went ahead and made these adjustments in advance, and these settings are on my radios. So I just wanted to show you that there are options. There are choices. Using chirp, you can go in here and make your Baofeng radio better. You can also use a BTEC speaker mic to make the audio quality of your Baofeng radio sound much better. And if you get the GT-5R and you combine it with this microphone, this QHM22 BTEC speaker mic, you can essentially solve the Baofeng radio issue. You can finally slay the dragon and finally have a radio that works the way it was supposed to 10 years later. Yeah. So anyway, I'm going to pull the plug. I'm going to end the video. I've been yakking now for 18 minutes in this video and 15 minutes in the previous video. So sorry about that, and I hope you took something away from this video. I hope it was educational, and I just hope it made you realize that the Baofengs have finally, the GT-5R finally solves some major problems with the UV-5R. And again, if you combine it with this speaker mic, you're good to go. You'll finally have a decent Chinese radio. Alright, and I know the Titera radios. I love the Titera radios. I am a very big fan of Titera. Not the biggest fan of Retivis, but I like them better than I like Baofeng. And I like Titera better than I like any other Chinese company. Titera, I think, makes the best Chinese radios. At least that's my opinion. Some of you may not agree with that. So I just wanted to put that out there, just so you know. But the DMR radios that Titera makes, combined with their analog radios that they make, yeah, Titera does a really good job. I tip my hat to Tytera. Bye for now.